I was always the dutiful son, the one who helped my aging parents with their finances every month without fail. My younger brother Ryan never contributed a dime, yet my parents adored him. Last Sunday, while searching for insurance papers in Dad's office, I stumbled upon their will. My hands trembled as I read that everything they owned would go to Ryan. The house, the savings, Dad's business, everything. All I got was Dad's watch and fishing gear. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from. Drop a comment and subscribe if you have ever felt betrayed by someone you have given everything to. The response I gave my mother when she texted me about the mortgage might surprise you. Growing up in suburban Chicago, I always knew my place in the family hierarchy. As the older brother at 32 years old, I was expected to be responsible, hardworking, and dependable, while my younger brother Ryan, now 29, was treated as the golden child. Our father, Thomas, 68, ran a small construction business that provided a comfortable living for our family, while our mother, Diane, 65, worked part-time as a school administrator to supplement their income. From an early age, the contrast between Ryan and me was stark. I struggled academically not because I lacked intelligence, but because traditional schooling never clicked with my practical mindset. I excelled in hands-on projects and had a strong work ethic that compensated for my academic challenges. Meanwhile, Ryan breezed through school with straight A's, as collecting academic honors effortlessly. While my parents never explicitly said it, their pride in Ryan was obvious, as was their subtle disappointment in my average grades. The pattern continued into our college years. I worked multiple jobs, often juggling three at once to pay my way through a state college. Mornings at a coffee shop, afternoons on campus, and weekends doing construction with Dad. Every dollar I earned went toward tuition and books. Ryan, on the other hand, received a full scholarship to an Ivy League university where he studied law. My parents never missed an opportunity to brag about their brilliant younger son. Despite the obvious favoritism, I carved out my own success. After graduating, I secured a position as an IT project manager at a reputable firm in Chicago. Over the years, I climbed the corporate ladder, earning a respectable salary that allowed me to live comfortably. I found stability in my career and in my relationship with Jessica, my girlfriend of 3 years, who worked as a child psychologist. Ryan followed a different path. While he graduated with a prestigious law degree, his entitled attitude created problems in the workplace. He struggled to hold down a job at any law firm for more than a year, always blaming others for his failures. Too arrogant with partners, too condescending to support staff. Ryan bounced between firms, leaving a trail of burned bridges. 5 years ago, when my parents began struggling financially, I stepped in without hesitation. Dad's business had slowed down, and their mortgage payments were becoming a burden. I started sending them $1,000 monthly to help with bills and extra expenses. It strained my budget, but I believed it was my duty. Ryan, despite his fancy degree and periodic high-paying jobs, never contributed. When I brought it up, my parents always defended him, saying he needed to focus on establishing his career. My parents lived in the same four-bedroom colonial-style house where Ryan and I grew up. The place needed repairs, the paint was peeling, and the roof desperately needed replacement, but they refused to downsize. Dad was too proud to admit he could no longer afford the maintenance, and Mom was emotionally attached to every creaky floorboard. Their stubborn pride kept them in a house that was slowly draining their finances, and I became the silent safety net that prevented them from sinking. Why did I keep helping? Despite the strain in our relationship, love, duty, and perhaps a lingering hope that one day they would see me, truly see me, for the devoted son I had always been. I wanted to prove my worth in the only way I knew how, by being reliable when Ryan was not. This pattern continued for years, becoming so routine that my parents began to expect my monthly contribution without acknowledging the sacrifice it represented. The day everything changed started like any other Sunday visit. I had driven to my parents' house for our monthly dinner, a tradition I maintained despite the underlying tension that always accompanied these gatherings. My father had mentioned needing help finding some insurance documents for a claim, so I offered to search through his office while Mom prepared dinner. The office was cluttered with decades of paperwork, tax returns, stacked alongside utility bills, all organized in a system only my father understood. I opened the filing cabinet, rifling through folders labeled with his messy handwriting. The insurance documents were nowhere to be found, but as I pulled out a thick folder marked Important Legal, a document slipped out and fell to the floor. I picked it up intending to return it to the folder, when the bold heading caught my eye: Last Will and Testament of Thomas and Diane Sherman. I hesitated, knowing I should respect their privacy, but curiosity got the better of me. What I read turned my blood cold. The language was formal and precise, leaving no room for misinterpretation. Upon their passing, the family home, all monetary assets, and my father's construction business would transfer entirely to Ryan. My inheritance consisted of my father's watch, a family heirloom passed down from his father, and his fishing equipment. The contrast was staggering, the message clear. Years of financial support meant nothing. In their eyes, Ryan deserved everything. I remember how my hands shook as I carefully returned the will to its folder, my mind racing to process this betrayal. My stomach clenched as if I had been physically struck. The room seemed to spin slightly, the familiar surroundings of my childhood home suddenly feeling alien and hostile. That evening I confronted them. We sat at the dinner table the pot roast Mom had prepared, growing cold as I carefully explained what I had discovered. I kept my voice measured, though inside I was screaming. My mother looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with her napkin, but my father met my gaze directly. Their justification was simple and devastating. Ryan needed more help to establish himself. He had potential but was struggling. I was already successful, stable, responsible. The subtext was clear: I would be fine without their help or assets, but Ryan would flounder. I remember nodding calmly, my fork pushing food around my plate while a storm raged inside me. When dinner ended, I excused myself early, claiming a work deadline. The drive home passed in a blur of streetlights and suppressed emotions, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. Jessica was waiting up when I arrived home, immediately sensing something was wrong. We sat on our living room couch as I recounted the discovery and confrontation, my voice occasionally cracking despite my efforts to remain composed. She listened attentively, her expression growing increasingly outraged on my behalf. When I finished, her advice was unequivocal. Stop the monthly payments. Stop enabling them. She pointed out what I had been too loyal to see, that my parents had taken advantage of my sense of duty for years, while planning to reward Ryan exclusively. Her perspective was the clarity I needed, unclouded by decades of family dynamics and emotional manipulation. That night, as Jessica slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and calculated the financial impact of my support. Over 5 years, I had given my parents $60,000, money that could have gone toward my own future, a house down payment, retirement savings, maybe even an engagement ring for Jessica, all given freely, out of love and obligation to parents who valued my brother more. By morning, my decision was made. I would not announce the end of my financial support. I would simply stop. No confrontation, no ultimatum, just the quiet cessation of funds they had come to expect. My bank account would appreciate the extra $1,000 each month, and perhaps my parents would finally appreciate what they had taken for granted. The first week after my decision passed without incident. No calls, no texts, no acknowledgement that my regular transfer was missing from their account. I found myself checking my phone more frequently than usual, both dreading and anticipating their reaction. The silence was unsettling, but also empowering. For once, I was prioritizing myself. 2 weeks in, my father called. His tone was casual, almost calculated in its nonchalance. After a few minutes of small talk about the weather and a recent sports game, he cleared his throat and mentioned that he had not seen my usual deposit in their account. Was there a banking issue I needed to address? I kept my response deliberately vague, mentioning something about reassessing my finances and needing to adjust some commitments. He seemed taken aback by my evasiveness, but did not press the issue. The call ended awkwardly with promises to catch up soon. By the third week, the casual approach had been abandoned. My mother began sending passive-aggressive texts about bills piling up and unexpected expenses. Each message was designed to trigger my sense of guilt and responsibility. In the past, these tactics would have worked immediately. This time I found strength in my resolve, and in the sessions I had begun with a therapist to process my feelings of betrayal. Doctor. Marshall, my therapist, helped me recognize the patterns of emotional manipulation that had defined my relationship with my parents for decades. We discussed how financial support had become my primary way of seeking approval and how that dynamic had allowed them to exploit my generosity without reciprocating with genuine appreciation. Friends rallied around me when I shared my situation. My buddy Steve was particularly outraged, recounting how he had witnessed my parents gushing over Ryan at gatherings while barely acknowledging my achievements. My college roommate Tyler reminded me of holidays when I had stayed on campus working to pay tuition while Ryan flew home on tickets my parents purchased. Their perspective reinforced that I was not overreacting. Around day 20, Ryan called. Unlike our parents, he skipped any pretense of friendly conversation. His voice was sharp with entitlement, as he demanded to know why I had stopped supporting Mom and Dad. When I calmly explained my discovery of the will, his reaction revealed more than he intended. Rather than denying knowledge of its contents, he became defensive about deserving the inheritance. Our conversation escalated into an argument that stripped away years of polite facades. Ryan admitted that he had influenced our parents regarding the will, arguing that since I had a stable career, I did not need their assets. The most revealing moment came when he sneered, "You have always been the responsible one handling everything, so why stop now?" His words confirmed what I had long suspected. My reliability had been weaponized against me. The emotional toll affected my work performance. Projects that normally came easily to me required extra concentration. My team leader noticed my distraction and asked if everything was all right. I shared a simplified version of my situation, and his understanding gave me additional flexibility during this turbulent time. Jessica proved invaluable during this period. One evening, she showed me research she had found on financial abuse within families. The patterns described matched my experience so closely that I felt a strange mixture of validation and sadness. It was comforting to know I was not alone in this experience, yet devastating to recognize the depth of the manipulation I had endured. My parents extended an invitation to a family dinner, clearly an attempt to resolve the situation face to face. I declined politely but firmly, explaining that I needed space to process my feelings. My mother responded with guilt-laden questions about whether I still loved them, while my father sent a stern message about family obligations. Their contrasting approaches to emotional manipulation were so transparent now that I could not believe I had been blind to them for so long. As the 1-month mark approached, the messages from my parents grew increasingly desperate. My father mentioned potential problems with his business cash flow. My mother talked about medication she might have to skip. Each text was a landmine of guilt carefully placed to erode my resolve. I maintained my distance while processing these tactics with my therapist. Exactly 1 month after I had stopped payments, the climactic text arrived from my mother at 7:48 a.m. The mortgage is due, no greeting, no inquiry about my well-being, just the raw demand barely disguised as information. The message crystallized everything wrong with our relationship, and I knew exactly how to respond. After seeing my mother's text, I took a deep breath and typed my response with steady fingers. I suggest asking Ryan. After all, he is getting the house. The reaction was immediate. My phone exploded with calls from both parents that I let go to voicemail. Text messages followed, ranging from angry accusations to tearful pleas. I silenced my notifications and went to work feeling strangely calm amid the storm I had created. That evening, an emergency family meeting was called for the following night. Despite Jessica's concerns about it being an ambush, I decided to attend with her by my side as moral support. The confrontation took place in my parents' living room, a space filled with family photos, predominantly featuring Ryan's academic achievements. My brother was conspicuously absent, having cited an important work commitment. I later learned it was a happy hour with colleagues, hardly the emergency that could not be rescheduled. As Jessica and I sat on the sofa across from my parents, the tension in the room was palpable. My mother had clearly been crying, while my father maintained the stern expression that had intimidated me throughout childhood. They began with a well-rehearsed speech about family duty and the shock of my sudden abandonment of responsibility. I listened quietly, allowing them to finish before responding. Years of suppressed emotions had prepared me for this moment, and I delivered my response with a calm confidence that seemed to surprise them. I spoke about the years of unequal treatment, the constant comparisons to Ryan, and the pain of discovering their will. From my briefcase, I produced a folder containing financial records of every payment I had made over the past 5 years. I laid out the total $60,000 and asked a simple question. If Ryan is the son you value enough to leave everything to, why has he not contributed a single dollar to your welfare? The question hung in the air, unanswered. My mother began to cry again, genuine tears this time rather than the calculated display from earlier. My father tried to justify their decision, arguing that Ryan had potential but needed security while I had always been the strong one. The weakness of their reasoning was evident even to them as the words left his mouth. Jessica, who had remained silent until then, spoke up with the perspective of someone outside our family dynamic. She pointed out how they had exploited my love and sense of duty while simultaneously planning to reward the son who had shown neither. Her calm professional assessment of their behavior seemed to hit home in a way my words could not. I concluded by setting clear boundaries for any future relationship. I would no longer provide financial support without recognition of my equal status in the family. The will needed to be revised for any semblance of relationship to continue. Family therapy would be a condition of rebuilding trust. These were not negotiations but terms for moving forward. As we stood to leave, my parents remained seated, seemingly stunned by the transformation in their once compliant older son. My father attempted one final manipulation, asking how they were supposed to pay their mortgage without my help. I suggested they could start by asking Ryan to contribute his fair share, or consider downsizing to a more manageable home, options they had rejected when I had suggested them years earlier. Jessica and I walked out together, her hand firmly in mine. The drive home was silent but not uncomfortable. For the first time in months, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. That night I slept deeply without the anxiety that had plagued me since discovering the will. The aftermath unfolded gradually over the following weeks. 3 days passed, with no contact. Then my mother sent a text that seemed more sincere than her previous communications. Rather than immediately demanding financial help or employing guilt, she expressed regret for taking me for granted. While not a complete acknowledgement of the deeper issues, it was a start. I responded, measured, opening the door to conversation while maintaining my boundaries. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop near my office, neutral territory, where the emotional weight of the family home would not influence our discussion. My father joined reluctantly, his pride clearly wounded, but his financial reality forcing his participation. Our conversation was uncomfortable but necessary. For perhaps the first time, they listened without immediately defending themselves or praising Ryan. I explained how their actions had made me feel valued only for my financial contributions, while my brother was loved unconditionally despite his lack of responsibility. They seemed genuinely surprised by the depth of my hurt, having never considered how their behavior appeared from my perspective. They admitted that my financial support had become something they expected rather than appreciated. More revealing was their confession that Ryan had indeed influenced their estate planning, suggesting that I would be fine without inheritance while he needed the security. They had not questioned his self-serving logic or considered how their decision would affect me. I proposed family therapy as a non-negotiable condition for rebuilding our relationship. Additionally, I requested they consult with their lawyer about revising their will to reflect an equitable distribution. They agreed to both conditions, though my father needed convincing on the therapy aspect. Ryan's reaction to these developments was predictably negative. When informed about the will revision, he called me in a rage, accusing me of manipulating our parents during a vulnerable time. The irony of his accusation was not lost on me. Our conversation ended with his threat to fight any changes legally, a threat that revealed more about his character than he intended. The first family therapy session was awkward and halting. Our therapist, Dr. Huan Barnes, skillfully navigated the complex dynamics, encouraging honest communication while maintaining boundaries. My father initially attempted to dominate the conversation, but gradually yielded as Dr. Barnes directed questions to each family member equally. My mother cried when I described feeling like a walking ATM rather than a son. Ryan attended only the third session, his reluctance obvious, but his participation required by our parents. Over the months that followed, slow but meaningful changes occurred in our family system. I established and maintained healthy boundaries, agreeing to provide limited financial support with clear conditions and acknowledgement. My parents began to appreciate my contributions rather than expect them, and our conversations included topics beyond money and bills. Perhaps most significantly, my father invited me to learn about the family construction business, something he had never done before. While I had no interest in changing careers, I recognized this gesture as his way of acknowledging my place in the family legacy. We spent several Saturdays together at job sites, and I gained a new appreciation for the business he had built. Ryan and I reached an uneasy truce. Our relationship would never be close, but a foundation of mutual respect began to form. He started contributing modestly to our parents' expenses, and though his payments were smaller and less regular than mine had been, the symbolic importance was significant. During one particularly honest moment, he admitted to feeling intimidated by my stability and success, a confession that helped me see our childhood competition from a new angle. Jessica stood by me through the entire process, her support unwavering. 6 months after the confrontation, I proposed to her during a weekend trip to Lake Michigan. She said yes immediately, and we began planning a small wedding for the following spring. My parents' reaction to our engagement was genuinely warm, without comparisons to Ryan or qualifications. The most profound change occurred within me. Therapy helped me recognize that my self-worth was not tied to my family's approval or financial expectations. I learned to value myself independently of their validation and to set boundaries without guilt. The people-pleaser who had silently funded his parents' lifestyle was replaced by a man who understood the difference between generosity and exploitation. My parents signed a revised will that divided their assets equally between Ryan and me. While the document itself was important, the willingness to create it represented a more significant shift in how they valued each son. The change did not erase decades of favoritism, but it acknowledged the inequality and took concrete steps to address it. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who took you for granted? Leave a comment below sharing your experience. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life stories about setting boundaries and finding self-respect. Share this video with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for themselves in their family relationships. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for others and yourself is to establish healthy boundaries.